Well, hello there, everyone. Here, Sherry, right here, talk about for hold though, and I'm sure that most of us here, have heard of that, and talk about it's like for whenever you hold something with your left hand or with your right hand or so. But you see right here is a picture right here of me whenever I was young and thinking necessarily to where that yeah that if this was like maybe the karaoke dance or if anything else maybe related to like good times or anything like that, and somebody wants to ask a question to her. May I ask you something? Why were you holding your arms like that? Like this for what I see in the picture, or if anybody were like thinking that you're looking at this picture here and looks like right here. This picture right here would have been taken of me when I was very young, standing in front of a plane, I think over there at the airport, that would have been about back in 1987, maybe 1989, something like that. But I was holding something right here. So I don't know if there was like maybe a gift shop around town to where like did some shopping and I was like anybody say yeah if you hold something with your left hand or your right hand or so, but knowing about I'm like really that people ask questions as to where that holding something, and this right here is an example right here of something that if anybody were to say that somebody asked you to hold something, and one of those was like yeah that would you please hold this, like, and what's this, I can just hold it. I can, oh, this right here. So you're like wondering to where that, yeah, that, anything about is to where that, anything that somebody may ask you to hold also. But you see right here is that this right here will be an example right here of like of a keychain right here. And I can go ahead and try to make this a little bit bigger, but this is like something like an example right here of a car key. So if anybody will warrant, or yeah, a car key right there. I could use some of my Photoshop work right here. But anyway, but if anybody will warrant to where, yeah, that the questions could go by as to where that, okay, what is it made out of, or what's it for, or what is it? But but this right here would have been a picture of me taken right here. Of like this was right here would have been like music time or maybe karaoke time. But I know quite a few people have asked me before as to where that why you do that with your arms, with your hands. It's like you fiddle your hands around, and I keep thinking though that a lot of it has to do with excitement. And I done that a lot of times whenever I was very young, whenever I got overly excited about something, that my arms would be tucked in like that, and if I was holding something, and if anybody will warrant to it, yeah, you look like you maybe where you were hugging something, but yeah, that you look at some of these pictures and people want to ask, what are you doing? Hey, that are you or are you hugging somebody like so that some of these moments of where we call it is to where that some that may think is to where what are you doing necessarily? So this picture right here was taken a long, both these pictures were taken from a long time ago, and this one right here was taken from recent. So if anybody wanted to work, that really that somebody may even offer you to say that they may be willing to pay you a little bit if they ask you to hold something, or if that to show something or something like that, then a lot of times you're like wanting to what does it usually mean when somebody asks you to hold something, and does that mean for like maybe volunteer or ask you for something necessarily to or if it's going to be like say maybe a couple of hours of working something and they ask you to hold something, and one of those could be maybe a gift card or a credit card or anything like that, anything about important papers. If they got their hands full of something, they may ask you to hold something. So that seems like when we hold something, it seems like to her that really there ain't nothing to it. It only that should only weigh about maybe 13 ounces. It's not that heavy. If you'll be willing to hold it. So if we can remember the first time how old we were when we were first holding something, it could maybe be a stuffed animal or a pencil or anything like that or a crayon. And you're like Warrentor at the time that really do people pay us a decent amount of money just for holding something or just what you call keeping something safe necessarily. And that's just a thing though, is to where that there are some jobs out there to where that you do them, and then they may pay you a little bit, or they say thanks, thanks for holding that, or providing the information that et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, well, there ain't nothing to it necessarily. But you see right here is a picture. I used the mask tool right here just to show this, but this right here would be an example right here of like, car key right here. And this one right here, these pictures right here were taken whenever I was very young. But you see right here is this picture right here. Is I were to be had this look if I were holding something, and don't know what it is necessarily to where that if I was just thinking something to my mind to where that if I want to hold something, or if it was during the karaoke time, is that whenever you get real excited or carried away about something, and you're gonna maybe hold your arms high in the air, or maybe if it's you're gonna wave, or maybe it's like having a time with having like a party gathering with your friends and family, and you're going to be doing different types of signs and signals and stuff. So whenever we look back at our old pictures, and it seems like that there's a number of questions that go on about what are you doing, or what did you say, or if anything about what were you thinking about in that picture. So, and I know that even though if it was years ago, and whenever I look at some of these pictures, that some people that may ask, like maybe my future girlfriend or anybody like that, or maybe a cousin, that if they whenever people come and whenever they see me or whenever they talk to me, maybe on Facebook or so, that they're gonna maybe be asking me as to her that why were you holding your hand like that, or why do you have that look on your face, or so, or maybe during the interview, why were you doing that? With you fiddling around with your hands, as amazing with your legs, and why it's like why was your hair wavy like that? And so it seems like to where that stuff that happened years ago, and people want to ask those questions. And the simple answers, and I know that sometimes when people ask questions, that the answers that more likely that they give them would be as to where excuse, or if it's like, well, that's understandable, or anything like that. But you see right here, this right here would be a picture right here of me, and I was holding something, I think like a map or some type of souvenir or something like that at the airport. And then this right here would be me right here, as to where if I were to be holding my arms like that right there. But then this, this paint, this Photoshop work that I worked right here is just me right here, was if I were to be holding an American flag. So this was right here, and I know that like with anybody that back whenever they were very young, whenever maybe about maybe a year old, that there could have been something around the house that they were holding, maybe like a toy, or maybe like a form or a paper. If anybody say, yeah, one of those is money, and I know that anybody like wanted to, or that if you were to be holding money and then keeping it safe, that do you think that maybe people will be paying you to do that, or like any type of small favor? And so you're like wanting to, especially if you're going to be at the festivals necessarily, and thinking about as to where that somebody says, here, I want to show you something. Okay, well, if you want to go ahead and hold this for a second, I'm going to go ahead and show you something here. And so if they got their hands full of something, and so they might say, do the teases to where that, give me a hand. Well, which one? I can. It don't matter which one, just give me a well, I don't know about, but with like anything about if it's going to be for for a hold, and as well as for how we respond to that. And we learned to like for the question mark, if we're going to be writing a sentence such as a sentence fragment, is to where that if we're going to be holding something, is to where that somebody asks is like, hey, that it's like you got the car keys, like, well, do I got them, or am I holding them, or whichever it is. But and then knowing about the different words of sentence fragment, and think about you have right here's the question mark, that it's like have right here's a dot was like with a little little say curl, like the curl finger on the top right here, and think about it, it's like that's supposed to be a question mark, and these right here is like if these what you call like I don't know parentheses or anything like that. But anyway, for how the source of language especially. And sometimes you're like one to where that do we kind of use that same thing whenever we're using, I say, our body language. And you're like one to where whenever you hold your left leg in, and then put your left hand leg out or something like that, the type of body language between the sign language, and as well as any type of language you say for like sentence fragments or anything like that. So the way we think about this, and thinking necessarily to where that, looking at these pictures right here, this right here was me right here, and even though if it happened years ago. People may ask those questions as about what was going on during that time. And whenever I look at some of these pictures, that sometimes anybody like say is to where, yeah, if you're going to be meeting somebody in particular, and I know that especially on a date, that you're going to be talking to one of your lady friends that you may met maybe in class, or you may be in school, or maybe on a job, or an interview, or some sort, maybe at a meeting, and you start to, you snack on something, and they ask you, how does it taste? Well, I really haven't been paying attention. I just been focused on what's been going on with ever since the meeting or something. So if anybody like wanted to, or like between hold on to hope or anything like that, like hold on to her, well, wait, wait just a minute. But really, the types of emotional situations that go on, especially if it's going to be maybe a date, or maybe it's like why we ask questions, and so you're like wondering to where that really that anything that's going on, especially on a date, is to where that really, I guess the main focus is mainly about, other than it's like for other than what you were working on, but other than that, getting to know the person in particular. So let's just say that if you were to be what you call ordering a special dinner or something like that, maybe on a date, and you're like wondering toward, hey, well, how's it taste? How's the salad taste? Or what'd you think about this or that? And sometimes that I guess some guys and some gals that may say is that they mainly pay attention to her about the person that they are with, and knowing about as to her how they take interest, especially knowing about, well, you want to speak up about something. It's like, well, hold on a second, not so fast. We need to talk about this first. But so I'm sure that we have gone through those situations to where that you want to talk about something and you just can't think about it, to where, hold on a minute, well, not so fast, or it's not the right time, or you're trying to figure out the right time of how to speak up about something, especially. But these right here will be old pictures right here of me. And if anybody will want to, or that even though if they're old, even though if they happened several years ago, the question could be as to where that when could be the right time to speak up about it, because it happened 20 years ago, and knowing about who really is interested in knowing about the whole story. And you would think that 20 years would be enough time to where between it, if it has an expiration date, which I don't think it does, but let's just say that on average is to where if it's something that happened 20 years ago and people want to find out about the actual story about something, and you're like thinking about it to where, well, hold on a second, like that second, of course, has been expired a long time ago. And think every time you try to speak up about something, it seems like people are saying is to where that if it really matters, or that think about is to where they're trying to get a whole understanding here about the situation. But the way I think about it is to where really try to speak up as best we can about some situations. And even though this picture right here was taken, of course, it's like if it was me, it's like knowing about if it's going to be maybe a friend of mine or some sort, and some that may say is like, we don't even recognize you in that picture just because of the way that your arms were folded in like that, like if you were holding something or hugging something. And in this picture right here, looked like to me that, yeah, that looked like that you were what's called known for like the student honor roll ceremony or something like that, holding the American flag there, as well as the state of Missouri. So if anybody were warned to where that you had to look at these pictures of you, and you're like thinking about is to where that, yeah, if you're going to be showing them to somebody else, and think about what they're going to be saying, especially is to where that, I just barely recognize you in that picture, just because, maybe because your original hair look, and maybe with the facial hair, and as well as with maybe that cute haircut, or maybe something that you were wearing, or something that you were doing. And they may ask when they look at those pictures as to where, what were you doing? So I know that this right here, of course, was not related to like any type of job interview, if anybody were warned, or that what exactly would you be holding during the job interview, and one of those would be like a resume or any other source of form that they would like to look at, especially. And this right here, and I know like with anybody that you could maybe be, you could not even be only 15 whenever you were first holding something. One of those could have been maybe like a cell phone. I'm like, yeah, that back whenever you were about maybe 5 months old that you could have been maybe holding something. And you're like, one of those could be maybe a book or a toy or some sort. So really, the question go by is to where that really, are we getting paid to hold anything really necessarily? Are we getting paid to hold anything important? And for how we hold it, do we have to have any specific training about how we need to hold it necessarily? Just what you call, like that they say that would you be able to hold this? And then after about maybe anybody say that follows of information, whichever it is, and then after about 2 weeks, and it's like, and they finally receive it from you, knowing about, yeah, well, I just asked you to hold it, but sometimes it's like, yeah, car keys, anything, has anybody, whenever they were very young, has anybody been asked to hold car keys or maybe a purse or wallet whenever they were very young, being at the wedding or maybe being at the gathering or anything like that? Has anybody been asked to do those favors, such as, can you hold this? One of those could have been maybe a booklet, or maybe anything about maybe journal or diary or anything like that, or maybe car keys. And, and we may see those especially on those cartoons, but on your hand too, you're like Warren, to where if you ask somebody to hold it, then more likely, what do you think that they would do with it? Well, hopefully they didn't flush it down the toilet, and hopefully that they didn't say by putting it in their mouths, or they're going to misplace it. But really, that if you're going to be holding anything in particular, and they might say is to her, hold something, and hey, can I hold your coat, or can I hold your glasses? And if anybody were to say is like, really, if you hold that person's glasses, they're going to tell you more than just what you call, please hold this. They're going to say is, especially if they're just reading glasses, if they're trying to dress into something else, or maybe if they're just trying to do something in particular, such as if they got their hands full of something, how often do you think that people would ask you to hold their glasses, or maybe hold their drink or anything like that, or maybe if it's going to be hold their keys or their purse or their wallet? And they might could get it back, but at the time you're like, Warren, to her that, oh, okay, whatever it is, okay, well, you want me to hold this for you? Oh, okay, yeah, I'll be willing to hold it, but whenever you're ready to have it back. And sometimes people want to say is to where if it's going to be any type of jewelry items or anything like that, you'll give it back, but sometimes they may ask for it back after about maybe 5 hours later, or maybe a day or two later, and you're like, Warren, to her that, oh, come on. My arms, of course, can only hold for so much also, but really that this look right here is like that. This is a picture right here, and I could maybe explain a little bit about what everybody sees right here. Is that whenever I'm getting real excited, that I used to do that a lot of times. If anybody wonders, to where it was a habit at one time until it was what you call like a habit that you kind of made into like a career. So if anybody wonders, to where, yeah, it was a habit. It was a habit. You just did it. You just all of a sudden it just happened. People ask, it's like, well, how'd you do that? Or but still, stuff I guess about how your body works and how your brain works necessarily, to where you just do stuff automatically, and then that gives somebody else an idea to where, well, you hold your arms like this, so we're asking you if you can go ahead and hold this for us, and so and like say, yeah, that's your job. My job, yeah, your job. Well, that was a habit. If I'm like, well, I gave you that, I assigned that job to you, and I asked you to hold something for me, because I got to take care of something right now. So if anybody wonders as to what do you call jobs that we thought that were habits? The habits. It's like you're like learning to where jobs that at one time you thought that it was a habit, but then until that they say is to where that you can be able to do somebody a favor just by they ask you to hold something. But anyway, but this right here will be example right here of my car key right here. And if anybody say that that they want to show you something, and then they hand it to you and ask you to hold it, okay, what is it? It's a book, or it's like it's a passport or some sort, or it's an ID. So you have right here, I don't know what this is that I'm holding right here in my right hand. It looks like from the left in the picture, but it's like from my right hand. But I tell anybody here, and it looks like to me it's like a scroll or a paper or anything like that. But if anybody wonders as to where, yeah, this right here, this is a picture of me when I was taken whenever I was about, oh, I think I was about 6 or 7, something like that. Yeah, that was before I even knew what all this job and credit cards or anything like that, student loan stuff was really. But the way I think about it too is to where that the jobs that we've had ever since we were very young, and thinking about is to where that it's like stuff that we thought that would cause like real how exciting, and then moments, moments like this that come up to her that people ask, why are you holding your arms like that? Were you at a party? Well, what were you thinking about? And some people that may say is like, oh, well, he's in love with what he's doing. He's in love with what he's doing until people realize, towards the end of the stories, toward it, yeah, that the amount of attention that he was getting while he was doing this. But whenever we look at these pictures and we may think about this, we kind of look back and laugh and know about. I have absolutely no idea what you were thinking about in that picture, but I think that people are going to find it very useful whenever graduation comes around, and knowing about for anything on a date or anything like that. That you'll interview, interview, any type of job interview, anything that you thought that was what you call totally embarrassing. But like Warren Tour, people ask you to hold something for them, and you're like, Warren Tour, why ask questions, huh? But then the simple answer will be used to where, okay, that shouldn't be a problem, or okay, well, I'll hold on for a few seconds or so. But looking at these pictures here and thinking necessarily to her, okay, I'll hold on. But I wanted to her, yeah, well, why were you holding the phone like that? But anyway, questions that maybe people may ask, especially. But anyway, but thanks for watching. While we asked you for hold, Man Make 25, and have a great day.